It's the weekend and you have financial questions that need answering. That can only mean one thing. It's time for Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome, welcome. Thanks so much. We are delighted that you are with us. Hey, we're also delighted when we get new stations. And we just got our first Boston station this month, so we're very excited about that. Thanks for listening, Boston. Mark and I are both lovers of Boston, but not Boston sports teams because we are New Yorkers. But that said, so we're very grateful. So shout out to Boston. Shout out to all the folks there who are listening right now. Remember, if you've got a financial question, or maybe it's a career question or anything remotely involved with your personal financial life, give us a holler. The email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. And we are broadcasting live from the Capital One Bank studios. All right, so here we are. It's June, summer job time for your kids. Mark, what was the worst summer job you ever had? Okay, Mark says he was a UPS loader, which is real work. And how did you get that job? Did somebody get that job for you? Okay, so he said somebody got the job for him. I think that most of the time kids are, reliant on their parents or their friends' parents to get these jobs. And I'm really down on the idea that kids should get the resume building job. I think they should get a job that pays. I'm not into the internship thing. I think they should get a job that pays. The labor market is tight right now, so you might be surprised what could be available even this late in the game. I just think that those kinds of horrible jobs, like I'm a cocktail waitress at a blankety blank, or I man the grill at the municipal pool. That's a tough job. That's always a tough one. My summer job of being the receptionist in a suburban real estate office with those realtors who come barking at you, freaking out about all the things that are wrong with the keys and how they can't get into the house. And you're just 16 years old saying I just give you the key, lady. I didn't say it was going to work. It's whatever. I learned a ton. So any job you will learn. Parents, don't forget to take your kids through what that first paycheck is. It's a great opportunity to do a little thoughtful lesson in taxes and make sure that the kid withholds money for taxes if the employer does not do that. All right, let's now get to a call. Our first one, it's Shirley, who's on the line from Washington, D.C. Welcome to the program. What can I do to help you out today?
Hi, Jill. Thanks so much for taking my call.
Sure.
I am kind of in a dilemma right now. I'm trying to make the decision about whether to do my 401k contributions on a pre-tax basis or using the Roth option that my employer offers.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Married, single, and how much do you earn?
I am a divorced woman. I am about 47 years old. Mm-hmm. I make about $70,000 a year. Mm-hmm. I kind of have a mix of retirement savings right now. So when I retire, I'm going to have a real diversity mm-hmm. of income streams. I'm going to have some defined benefit pension. I'm going to have, hopefully, Social Security. But I also already have some, I have a Roth 401k. I have a couple traditional IRA options, and I also have a 457 deferred compensation plan mm-hmm. account. So I'm just trying to weigh my options and figure out if it makes more sense for me at this point to really invest in the Roth 401k option or if traditional would still be better.
Okay, so let's just run down to some of the numbers, though. If in Roth assets, how much do you have about?
I have about $140,000 in Roth assets.
Okay,
right
and how about the traditional IRA?
So with the traditional, I'm going to kind of lump my deferred compensation plan in with that, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's correct.
Yep.
But I have about $300,000 in all of those other accounts combined, not including the defined benefit pension.
Gotcha. Okay. And right now, how much money do you put aside, and how much money is going into this potential either Roth or traditional retirement account?
So for the 401k account with my current employer, I have been contributing the 8% of my salary, so about $500 a month, into the pre-tax plan.
Yep.
I recently got a raise, and I figured out that I could afford, with my monthly cash flow, I could probably afford to contribute about 10% if I contributed on a pre-tax basis. But if I contribute to the Roth 401k, I can really only afford to contribute the 8%.
Gotcha.
That I'm currently contributing, which is the maximum that my employer will match.
So just a frame of reference for the defined benefit plan. Do you have an estimate at about how much that would be, whatever, 20 years in the future when you retire, about how much income you would get from that?
I have a really, really rough estimate at this point. I'm still too young to get, an official estimate.
Yep.
I'm estimating it'll probably be around $2,000 a month. But that's kind of a rough estimate at this point.
So you're in a funny situation. No, not that funny. Interesting situation because... Yeah. You're in a tax bracket right now, the 22% tax bracket. The 22% tax bracket goes up to $82,500, okay? So in your case, it goes from $38,700 to about $82,500. If we were to presume that the tax structure stayed exactly as it is today, but we know it's not, right? Because it's sunsetting. So this is a funny plan, right? But even if we were to assume that you pretty much would be in the same tax bracket when you retired as you are right now, right?
Yes.
Okay, so now let's roll the clock back a little bit and say, okay, well, what happens when this sunsets? You actually will go into a higher tax bracket under the current plan. Because of that, I think you are better off doing a 401k on a Roth basis, because you'll lock in a tax liability that I think is probably going to be lower than where you'll be. At the worst case, it'll be the same. And best case, you'll pay a tax at this 22% rate today. And when if for some reason your taxes go up in the future, you've kind of made a great trade. You've paid taxes at 22%. For all you know, it goes back up to 28%. So I think I'm going to choose the Roth option for you today because I just think first of all, you already have a lot of money, as you said, $300,000 or so saved. You're going to have income between the defined benefit and the Social Security, not to mention the fact that you'll have to take money out of that traditional structure when you're 70 and a half. I would like to have as much money as I could where I already know what my tax liability is going to be. I think you're in great shape. I would do the Roth. Don't freak out about I have to do a little bit less. That's the smart thing to do. So do the Roth option.
Okay, great.
All right.
That's exactly what I wanted to know. So
fantastic. Okay, we will return in just a moment. During the break, go to JillOnMoney.com. Just go. And there you can sign up for our free weekly newsletter. It's free. And you can also send us an email. Just hit the Contact Us button, and you will be able to contact us very quickly. Or just email us. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. We'll be right back.
.401ks, IRAs, refinancing, she covers it all. Back to Jill on Money with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. If you've got a question, we'd love to hear from you. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. And our website is jillonmoney.com. And there you can buy my book. It's called The Dumb Things Smart People Do With Their Money, 13 Ways to Right Your Financial Wrongs. I'm ready to compile my summer reading list, Mark. I want to post that, probably 4th of July week. What are your best tips for me? I'd love you to tell me. It doesn't have to be a classic financial book or even a personal finance book. It could be any book that you are just devouring or excited to devour. Let me know. It's summer reading here at Jill on Money. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Let us know good suggestions for summer reading 2019. You know what I think I'm going to do? This is a little bit ambitious, but I'm going to try anyway. I think I'm going to reread Anna Karenina, which, Tolstoy in the summer, what could be better? Anyway, let us know. Let's go take a call. Right now, we are about to talk to Laura, who's calling from Seattle.
Hello. Thank you for taking my call and giving me the opportunity to talk. I love your show.
Oh, thank you.
My main question is, I am 10 years younger than my husband. He's 60, I'm 50. And I just want to make sure our financial picture is solid and sound, especially being the younger one of the two. We both work for the same company.
That's funny. So you both work together, or you just happen to work for the same company?
No, my husband has been working for this company for nearly 30 years. We're sales reps. So we work from home. Our office is in our home. But I came on with him about 4 years ago because he is just so busy. And my background is in the same sort of background, sales and retail and management, and yeah.
Okay, so how is it going for you guys financially?
I think okay. I'm a worrier. My husband's not. So he thinks we're doing great. I don't know. I just want to get another look at it.
Okay, so let's start very easy here. So
okay.
You're married. Do you have kids?
We do. They're older. They're out of the house.
Okay. Yeah. How much do you guys earn together?
Together before taxes, about $350,000 plus thousand.
Okay.
Before taxes, expenses. Our expenses kill us, I'll tell you.
Really? Because are you independent contractors?
Yes.
Okay. So let's pull back the numbers a little bit for me. So out of the 350, what do you think you really are earning? Like, what percentage of that money, of that 350, falls to the bottom line for you?
Oh, I would say dollar-wise, we're at about $250.
Tell me a little bit about the amount of money you need to live on. Like, if you have to pay taxes, and you said you've got expenses, you're putting money away for retirement. You're 50 and your husband's 60. So, what do you think you need to plan on in terms of income that you will need to produce when you retire?
I would say, roughly working out the numbers, about 40 to 45 a year.
That's it? No way. You got to be living on more than that. You own a home?
We do.
And you have a mortgage outstanding on it?
Not much. $43,000. We'll have that paid off before
by the time
retire.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how much you guys putting away into retirement right now?
We try to max out we have a SEP set up. We try to max it out.
Okay.
So, because of my age, I'm limited to $12,000.
Okay. And for him?
$50,000.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. So, but you're putting away, how much money do you have in retirement assets right now?
Roughly, with both of our pictures, I would say $500,000.
Okay. How long do you think you're going to work?
We have a lot of discussions about that. I would say another 5 to 8 years.
Okay. And he's going to keep putting away like that kind of solid $50,000 a year, probably, your guess?
We're trying to. Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
I mean, look, you're putting away a bunch of money. Here's a good rule of thumb to think about. Let's say that by the time you retire in 5 or 8 years, that your $500,000 is, I don't know, 800, 900, maybe even it's $1 million. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to assume. I'm not assuming that you're making so much money on your money. What I am assuming is that you are actually able to contribute this much money. And that's the advantage you have. In other words, I'm not saying you're doubling your money going from $500,000 to $1 million by the time you retire. I'm assuming your money makes some money and you're putting a lot away so that by the time you retire, if you had $1 million, okay, which I'm guessing you're kind of on track for, just because, if he's putting away 50 grand a year and it's 8 more years, right there, you're getting pretty close to $1 million without any growth. So if you have that $1 million, if you presume that, you want that money to last, because it's got to, you will still be young. And so we need to make sure you've got enough money that you'll generate about 35 grand a year out of that $1 million. So if you have that plus his Social Security plus your Social Security, then you're probably on target to reach your needs. He may be right that, gee whiz, you actually do have a pathway to hit retirement goals. That's sorry. Is he going to be happy about that?
Absolutely.
All right. So here's the thing. I will say that when you're worried about this, it may mean that you just need to get like another set of eyes, or you just need to run some retirement numbers yourself to convince yourself. I mean, you have a business where I presume, you're always projecting out into the future, right? You're salespeople. So you got to take a little bit more of that approach when it comes to your personal financial life, because it's kind of the similar thing. You say, well, how am I going to reach my goal? This is what I'm going to do. And you back it out just the way I did it. If you're worried and you need to run those numbers, or you want to do it with an advisor, that's fine. But you're probably, I don't know, I'm going to just probably make your advisor mad, because you wrote in and you said you have an advisor right now, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, like if you're worried that you don't think you've got the right advisor for you, because maybe you don't trust this so much, and that's why you're calling me, just to sort of be like, I want to get a little extra assurance, then I think what is appropriate is that you can certainly go present this to someone else. But I'm kind of confident, just based on what you tell me, a lot of income, putting a lot of money away into retirement, and also that you don't actually have huge retirement income needs, that you're on track. But I do want you to pay attention to the fact that if you have a financial planner, anyone listening, if you're working with somebody who's either a financial planner, an advisor, a CFP, a CPA, and you've got some funny feeling that you don't quite trust that, I would listen to that, and I would get another opinion to confirm that you're in a relationship that is worthwhile pursuing. So what I would suggest to you, Laura, is I think you might want to go check out a fee-only financial advisor. Maybe you can go through NAPFA, NAPFA.org, and maybe pay someone to do a straight-up retirement analysis for you. And you pay that person by the hour or a flat fee, and you start to feel settled in your belly that you're on the right track. Because I think I can do that in a very superficial way. I would prefer that you feel more confident about the person that you may be working with right now. And maybe the only way to do that is to get an unbiased third party to do so. We'll get back to more of your questions in just a moment. Hey, during the break, why don't you subscribe to our sister program? It's a podcast called Jill on Money. You can get it on Apple, Stitcher, radio.com, Google Play, anywhere else you find your favorite podcasts. We'll be right back.
Back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger helps you take the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, we want to hear from you. It's very easy. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Okay, Ken is writing about the optimum Social Security retirement age. And whenever I get these questions, it kind of freaks me out because it's kind of hard to do. It's a very long process. So, first thing first, everyone listening, you have to go to ssa.gov. You can manage your account online, and then you get it's always there. So it's very good to do that. The next thing is there's actually an estimator, which helps you estimate your retirement benefits. By the way, these are all on the website at jillonmoney.com. Just go under, it's very easy. Just go resources and you click it. And you'll see there's the Social Security Manager Accounts Online and the estimator. Okay? So now let us get back to the question at hand. That's important. Okay. Now, Ken's only 47, which is funny that he's doing this, but God bless him. He said, most of the advice I heard on this issue is to hold off as long as you can, since you'd be better off in the long term. The monthly amount that you get is higher. It's true. The point of Ken's message is to question the conventional wisdom that it's always better to hold off receiving Social Security benefits. He goes through a whole long calculation, okay? And here's the deal. Since you don't know when you're going to die, it's hard to make a calculation like this stick. Here is what we generally know, Ken. So before you go into the whole thing, the break even on Social Security is essentially you've got to live to if you were looking at age 70, you've got to live till about 82 usually. And then it makes it worthwhile to hold off till age 70. Now, if you think you're going to die sooner because you've got bad health in your family or you yourself have bad health already, then it's different. So it's not he's saying, I'm not criticizing anything you've said. I just don't recall you mentioning on the topic instead of getting an 8% increase. The point is that all of this works the longer you live. And if you don't think you're going to live long because of, again, your family history, you can choose to receive it earlier. We don't like people to receive Social Security benefits at 62 because the benefit is permanently reduced. And that one has a much better hurdle in terms of how long you have to live for it to have it make work for you, waiting from 62 to your full retirement age. So that's the story. And you're right. We can't use a cookie cutter approach, except that when you give information to the masses, sometimes you sort of have to give the big, broad ideas, especially if you're married and someone else is relying on your work history for his or her Social Security benefit. Ken writes, I enjoy listening to your show. Keep up the good work. I was first introduced to you when you assumed the Aunt Jill role on the 404 podcast with Jeff, Wilson, and Justin. He just mentioned that. He thought we might want some demographic information. Anyway, thank you, Ken. I appreciate it. Good. It's a good point. Sometimes, there's also some cool stuff like that. I know this sounds a little bit morose, but I think that there is a website, I think it's called Living to 100, that does life expectancy. Yes. We got to put this on the website, Mark. It's always fun. There's a life expectancy calculator. It's livingto100.com. And it basically does kind of say, here's what my health history is, my parents, blah, 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 and then it calculates. So it's just a general guideline. That's all. So check that out. Dina writes, she's 59, husband 62. They're both retired. They've got good monthly income, muni bonds, traditional IRA, Roth IRA, stocks, CDs, annuity, checking account. House is fully paid for. They've got very low monthly expenses. They've got 2 children grown up. Do you think we need to have a financial advisor with a fee of 1.1%? I think you can probably do it yourself, but it really depends on, what you want to do in your retirement, really. But they got a lot of money, probably more than they need. And then 2, we have a lot of cash. In your opinion, do we have a lot of cash in the wrong investments? How can we grow our money? And we don't want to generate a lot of taxable income. We're conservative. We don't like risk. Do you recommend that we buy more annuities or rental property? No on either. So what I would think is this. You got a bunch of money. I don't know who's managing the money currently, but you got what I would say is you've got a lot of individual stocks. It's managed by some financial guy at 1.1%. I would probably, be interested to see what else this person's doing for 1.1%, but you probably don't really need that. CDs are great. You already have an annuity, so you don't need another one. You know what you need? You need an unbiased third party to take a look at this. You also may want to try to work with a robo-advisor. That could be Betterment. That could be Vanguard's personal service advisor. It could be Schwab, the Intelligent Portfolio. That's probably what you're going to end up needing. The only thing is you have these stocks. I don't know what the cost basis is. I don't know whether or not these are held in a retirement account or a non-retirement account. But you probably could get someone to take a look at all of this and give you an opinion. The best bet is to go to NAPFA, N-A-P-F-A, N-A-P-F-A, NAPFA.org. And there you might be able to get somebody who gives you some unbiased advice. But it depends how much you guys want to do. That's the other thing. A lot of people really have to remember that doing this is something that requires time, energy, and a real good grip on your emotions. Amy is a 41-year-old former software professional turned temporary stay-at-home mom, 15 years of career experience. She's been staying home for a while. Should I convert some of my investments in a taxable account to a Roth IRA? No, that's not what you would do. You only convert from a retirement account into a Roth IRA. And you want to know about trading investments in your taxable account? I wouldn't do that. You trade investments with the money you can afford to lose. Do it in a retirement account so it doesn't create tax liability. All right. If you need more help, just give us a holler. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. We'll be right back.
Do I invest here? Should I put my money there? Jill Schlesinger can help you. Back to Jill on Money.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, we'd love to hear from you. You can just go to the website, JillOnMoney.com. Click on the Contact Us button, and there we are. You've contacted us. While you're on the website, how about you help a girl out? Buy the book. The book is called The Dumb Things Smart People Do With Their Money, 13 Ways to Right Your Financial Wrongs. Love for you to buy it at any bookseller of your choice. Here is an email from someone who says, in all caps, please don't use my name. Okay, got it. So Anonymous is 67, owns a business with spouse, 68. It's a subchapter S. Income comes from royalties. We've been taking paychecks to fully fund our SEP accounts. However, there's going to be a huge drop-off in our payments from about $390,000 a year to $100,000 a year starting this year. And we don't expect it's going to ramp up again, unfortunately. My feeling is that we should forego the paycheck thing, thereby not having to pay both sides of the federal and state withholding. We'd then take the money out of the business via distributions and pay quarterly estimates, which we do now. Thoughts? Hey, I think this is actually a question that you might want to talk to an accountant about. So it's true you wanted to pay tax, but you wouldn't be paying into Social Security either. So maybe that doesn't matter because you probably maybe max out Social Security, but I would run this by a CPA or a tax preparer just to get a second opinion. It would be nice not to have to pay that the both sides of the federal and the state, and basically, I see. I'm sorry. I lied. They're both drawing Social Security already, so it doesn't matter. So yeah, I mean, using it as just distributions, that sounds fine. And I don't know how much money you have in the SEP accounts. That would be another piece of the puzzle, but I think this sounds like the right decision for you guys right now, given where you are in your lives. All right. Let's keep going here. Come on. Valerie's husband was forced to retire for medical reasons, and one of his previous employers is forcing him to take retirement at age 65 or forfeit it. We're trying to find a place to park the funds until at least age 70. Any suggestions? Well, look, you can take that money, roll it over, and roll it over into an IRA rollover account, and you can park it anywhere you want. So one of the things, I don't know if you're going to need this money, but one of the things you could do is you could go directly to, say, a no-load mutual fund family. Okay, when I say that, I always roll these names off. I'm going to do it more slowly. Vanguard, T. Rowe Price, Fidelity, Schwab is a TD Ameritrade. These are all places that have low or essentially zero-cost index mutual funds available. Some of them also have the online advisor platform. So that would be Vanguard or Schwab or a company called Betterment, which used to be the sponsor of my podcast, no longer is. So I can happily say that it's a very good service. Any of these companies would be a good place to park money. Now, if you think you're going to need the money, if you think that you are going to actually want your hands on that money, you can also put some of it in a bank. Very easy to do. But don't let them sell you anything. Got it? Does Pinky swear? Good. This is so cute because someone named Jessica sent something with the subject credit card, and there's a little credit card, although it looks like an Easy Pass to me, not a credit card. So I'm so glad that I found you, and I ordered you a new book. I can't wait to read it. I'm a business owner and a distributor for an eyelash extension cosmetic product from Europe. This is a big deal. I didn't know anything about this eyelash extension. I must be the big dope who just puts mascara on, but there are people who are doing the whole eyelash extender thing. Okay. Now, this all sounds great, but I have a credit card balance, $12,000. I don't know how I can pay it back. Sometimes I can't sleep. My business is doing okay. I say to myself before that you got to get the credit card balance to zero. I paid some expenses through my credit card. I think you know what my problem is. Any good advice on how I can work on this? Yeah, you just got to put it on autopilot. That's the deal. So what I think that you can do is set up an automatic payment and make sure that you don't use this anymore. No, you do not pay for any more stuff on this through the credit card. And anyway, I just hope that, you know, if you prioritize it and make that payment automatic, it's usually the best way that people pay off these debts. So I wish you the very best of luck, truly. What's my time, dude? 1 minute? Okay, very quickly. This is Kathy, who doesn't have a 401k. She's been using various retirement plans. She's going to be 62 next tax season. She said, I can't put as much as I want into a Roth and still max my IRA at $6,500 since it's already been taxed. I thought it was an extra source of retirement funds. No, you can only put $6,500 a year. Well, now $7,000 this year total, whether it's Roth or conventional IRA, traditional. So maybe stop doing the traditional IRA. Maybe you don't need to do that anymore. Maybe you can just do the Roth. I don't know. You might make too much money for that. Anyway, you could always just use an investment account. A lot of people freak out about all this, and tax rates are low. So maybe just invest in a non-retirement account altogether. If you've got a question about your financial life, I want to hear from you. The email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. That's askjill@jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money. And, a lot of you ask for recommendations for financial advisors. We've got that in our resource section, but I've always mentioned NAPFA, the National Association of Personal Financial Advisors. It's napfa.org. Let'smakeaplan.org is the CFP website address where you can find a CFP in your neighborhood. And here we go. Yvette is 67. Pension income and Social Security, and let's see, some other stuff, part-time income. Looks like there's about 39, almost $5,000 a month. I bought a condo about a year ago. got a 20-year mortgage. I've been paying about $300 a month extra towards the principal. When I turn 70, I'm going to take my own Social Security benefit. Instead of my spousal benefit, I will have about $25,000 in a Roth and about $175,000 in stocks, bonds, traditional IRA. I live within the amount I receive from my pension, so I have about $1,000 a month extra. I can either pay down the mortgage or invest in the Roth. Why can she put money in a Roth? I don't get it. Is she still working? I don't get that. Okay, so first of all, you have to have earned income to invest in the Roth. Or is your spouse still working? Because you have that spousal benefit. But it looks to me like you can put the money into the Roth. Oh, I see. Part-time income. Okay, so there is some part-time income. Yeah, put the money in the Roth. Don't pay down the mortgage. I mean, unless the mortgage payment, interest rate is really high. I don't know. It seems like you're doing fine. So I might just put money into the Roth. But if you really want to be, maybe what you should do is this. If you really want to be debt free, why don't you split it? Why don't you take half of the $1,000 towards the principal and half the extra $500 you can put into the Roth. There, we split the difference and everyone's happy. Hooray! Another happy person. Oh, I bought myself a pair of Allbirds. I see they're shipping right now. That's what I just got on my computer. Thank you very much. All right. Listen, gang, when you're looking at all this stuff and you got lots of questions, just send us an email, will you? Don't struggle on your own, okay? It's Jill on Money. We are broadcasting live from the Capital One Bank studios. We've got a whole nother hour, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.
It's the weekend, and that can only mean one thing. You're listening to Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life. It's Jill on Money. I'm Jill Schlesinger. Delighted that you are joining us. We are broadcasting live from the Capital One Bank studios in New York. And if you would like to come on board with us, ask us a financial question, ask us a career question, give us a shout. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Today, we've got a great guest. Her name is Ellen Ruppel-Shell. She's written a book called The Job, Work and Its Future in a Time of Radical Change. Here is journalist, professor, and author Ellen Ruppel-Shell. What drew you to this topic?
Oh, wow. I think the glib answer would be masochism.
Yeah, it's rough.
Work is a topic about which everyone has an opinion, and unfortunately everyone has their own facts. So I actually resisted doing it for a good long time because I knew I was going to be jumping into a morass, right? Just a huge, sweeping topic. At a certain point, I reached a point where I felt like I couldn't avoid it because everybody was talking about work. It seemed that everybody was worried about work in some way, and very few people were actually doing much about work or actually really committing much thought to it. You know, there were a lot of canards out there, there was a lot of common wisdom that people were glomming onto. And as a journalist with a background in science in particular, I just found that very unsatisfying, and I really felt I needed to kind of get to the bottom of it.
When you started the project, what was your own view of your work and your job?
Oh, well, I'm very fortunate in the sense that I'm a college professor and a writer, right? So I'm one of those odd ducks who actually does have a lot of control over her time and her job. Not entirely, of course, and of course that's changing. Even in academia, you know, that's changing very quickly. I'm kind of old school, and so I have those privileges. But many people I know, I'm from Boston, including extremely well-educated people, you know, people who went to those institutions we've all heard of, were really being surprised that despite their high-level education, their high skill level, they were having difficulty, and a lot of them were very afraid for their children. And one thing, when I was testing the waters thinking about doing this book, I'm a correspondent also a long time for this magazine called The Atlantic. So I wrote a little essay for The Atlantic about work and its meaning, just to test the waters to see if they get responded, people would respond. And I got this tsunami of response, this flood of responses, which kind of didn't surprise me because I knew everybody was talking about work and worried about work. But what did surprise me was how many people just starting out in the workforce were writing to me and talking to me. Many of them had done everything right. They were, young in their mid-20s. They had gone to college. Some had gone to grad school. They had done all the right things. And they were writing me because even though they were what we would think of as successful, and I'm sure their parents considered successful, they were deeply dissatisfied and unhappy with work. Some of them actually were putting in long hours and more hours, feeling like as long as maybe what I need to do is work harder and longer, and that'll make me happy. And of course, that led to this downward cycle for them. And that really prompted me, okay, I've got to do something. And that probably was the biggest influence in my taking on this project.
And you begin the book by saying that work has changed in America. So without going so deep and covering all the ground that you cover, give us a broad brush of how you see that change.
Well, I think we all know it, right? It's been out there. It's been covered quite a bit. There's a lot more contract work, right? So even though we have a very low unemployment rate, a lot of us have very precarious employment. We might drive an Uber, a couple hours a week. That counts as being employed. We might be a dog walker. We might have any kind of function that is really precarious and is contract work, right? Mm-hmm. So our employer does not have great loyalty to us. They're taking us on to do a particular task, and then they're letting us go. So that whole idea of loyalty to workers and maintaining a workforce over a period of time, of course, is less and less. It's not gone, but it's less and less.
Right. And to find those companies where the employee is really the focus has changed so dramatically. I remember in the 80s we had, Neutron Jack Welch at GE, who was lauded for he basically fires a bunch of people, lets the buildings keep standing. And he was seen as some great, awesome leader. By the way, I never bought that, and all of GE's troubles trace back to him. But that said, when you see the happy person at work, you mention control.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's huge. I think that even people I know who work a ton, and I would put myself in that camp, sort of like you, where it's like I've got a nice solid gig with CBS News, but on the side I get to do a lot of stuff. But I do find myself working quite a bit. Right. But I don't feel out of control. I feel like I control my own destiny. Why is that so important?
Control is important to many people in terms of work. The thing that people seek most in their job, as opposed to work, which are different things, is stability. And people underestimate the importance of stability. A lot of employers, a lot of academics, actually, who write about this and talk about this, don't talk a lot about stability in work, because a lot of what is said is people want challenge and variety and novelty in their work. Well, some people do, and in fact, a lot of academics and a lot of hotshots do, but most of us seek stability in our work, and that is what I think a lot of people feel is kind of slipping away and is making us feel really precarious. There's a word called the precariat that was coined by an academic in England, and many of us now feel like we can be easily traded out. Mm-hmm. We're somewhat disposable. And that makes people feel very insecure and very nervous, and also doesn't put them in a position to negotiate better terms of their employment the way you've been able to do, okay?
And you as well, right?
So to some degree, yes, but the vast majority of Americans cannot do that. They don't have the leverage to negotiate. So even though we have a startlingly low unemployment rate. Economists would predict that there'd be wage growth, very rapid wage growth, because there's apparently a scarcity of employees. But in fact, wage growth has been very, very sluggish. People do not feel that they have that leverage to negotiate for their jobs.
And so when you're talking about the uncertainty of work, when people are feeling that, not only do they have like a nervous system reaction, but there's no way they can be good at what they're doing because they're always on edge and they're always anxious. And I see that all the time. And we hear from those people who say to me, I have this job offer. It is for more money, but I really like where I am. Am I a loser for not taking that job?
Right.
And my answer is, happiness does count.
Right.
I think that uncertainty is really fascinating. You're right. People don't ask for raises. And also maybe it's why there are some people who would rather opt out than subject yourself to this horrible anxiety where you're not even making that much money and no one cares about you. We'll get back to our interview with Ellen Ruppel-Shell in just a minute. Boy, we're talking about work. What's going on in your career? Need some help? Need some negotiating tactics? Give us a holler. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. And don't forget, you can go to JillOnMoney.com anytime and sign up for our free weekly newsletter. We'll be right back.
If you've missed any part of the show or want to check out a past show, go to JillOnMoney.com for more great personal finance content.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. If you have a financial question, if you have a comment, if you have some ideas to help other listeners help take control of their financial lives, give us a shout. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. All right, so we're going to get back to our interview with Ellen Ruppel-Shell in just a minute. She's written a book called The Job, Work and Its Future in a Time of Radical Change. And I love this part of the interview because we talk about the difference between a job and a career. That is something that always kind of interested me, that some people just like a job. Some people say, I want a career. What's the difference? We turn to Ellen Ruppel-Shell for the answer. Do you feel like there is some difference between when you say a job versus a career? And what is this like weird pornography about working till, midnight? And, you tell the story of the young investment banker barfing into his trash can. I mean, what is that? How did that develop?
Yeah. Well, there's a long history of that, of course. And, people who in the 50s, the organization, man, it's a long history of people overworking. But to get back to your question about career versus job, I mean, obviously today that's a pretty artificial distinction. It's really hard to know what constitutes a career versus what constitutes a job. I mean, obviously, so-called careers are elevated in the public mind. The idea that you've got even a vocation, you've got a something with a lot of status, and a lot of what we used to think of as just jobs now have fancy titles, and they've been elevated to careers. But again, that's kind of a way to con people into thinking they should work longer hours. They're not being paid hourly, right? They're being paid salaries, not wages, right? And so all that says, okay, now we pretty much own you, night and day, of course, with, cell phone access and internet access 24/7. Today, it would be pretty high status to have a job and actually be able to control your time and say, you know what, it's 5 o'clock, I'm going home and I'm unplugging. That, I think, would be great if that became high status. The idea that you actually control your time, your employer does not control your time, the idea that you are available 24/7 to employer now actually has high status. I think lots of us have friends who say, I'm too busy. I can't do this. I can't do that with you. I'm busy all the time. And what does that mean? That means that person is needed by their employer, right? They're essential to their job in their mind, right? That's the idea, and that becomes high status. One of the things I advocate in the book is to rethink that calculation. Is that really high status, or is that a kind of slavery?
Totally,
right?
Exactly. And,
right?
and like the way that you basically compare like piecemeal workers with an adjunct professor, which I loved. And also, by the way, we see that in journalism all the time. I'll pay you by the word.
Oh, yeah.
Or I'll do this,
Yeah.
or there are certain parts of news organizations that are unionized, and there are strict rules around that. But all the new technology and all the online outlets, there's no union there. There's no one saying, this is insane. We cannot have people here 14 hours. We just can't. I mean, there really has to be a national emergency that we're covering to do that, right?
Sure.
We get it that if there were an emergency, people would respond. But not
Absolutely.
every day is an
Absolutely.
emergency.
Right. And that's so well put, Jill, that every day now has become an emergency. Everything is with exclamation points. It must be done now. The idea that everything is so important, everything is like open heart surgery.
Right.
When basically, oftentimes, just to get a product out or get some software done or things like that. And we actually have been conned into thinking that this is really important stuff. And one of the things I talk about in the book is this so-called, what I call the passion paradox, this idea that we should feel passionate about our work. In the book, I talk about an outtake from the TV show Girls, which is so funny because the heroine of that story, Lena Dunham, plays that role. She had just graduated from college, and she was trying to get a job in New York City, and she'd applied for a job frosting cupcakes, and she was turned down for this job. And she went very nicely, and she went to the manager of the cupcake store and said, why did you turn me down from this job? I'm a college graduate. I could do this job. And he said, well, let me give you a little insight here. You didn't feel passionate about frosting cupcakes.
Right.
You didn't show passion about this. Now, this was a joke, obviously, but it also reflects a reality, a lot of kids in her generation, of how they were feeling. How do you go to a job interview? You have to show passion. You have to show a total investment in the goals of your employer. You have to put aside your own goals and invest, or at least show that you're investing in the goals of the employer. You have to create this emotional chemistry with your employer to show that you're in with the corporate culture. So you're not just sharing your skills and your talents, which of course is great on the job. All this emotional energy you're putting into your job. So that made me reflect on those letters I'd gotten in response to that little Atlantic essay of those young people saying, I'm so unhappy, I'm so miserable. The reason is because, say, one guy was an accountant, and he's expected to invest his body and his soul in being an accountant. When being an accountant can be very interesting, it can be a well-paid job, it can be a great job, but the idea that it should be his whole life and that he should feel passionate about it is pretty unrealistic.
And then you have that weird thing where people are defining themselves and their passion by their work, and then they have nothing else. And I know many people who leave these high-powered jobs and they are unmoored without the work. It's very strange, actually. I know that there are people who have plenty of money and they don't have to work ever again. So I sort of think, well, they're leaving the workforce, so time to do some good or go teach some kids or go be, I don't know, volunteer or have some fun. And then they jump right back into one of those disgusting environments that they just complained about for 25, 30 years. Why are they doing that?
Again, one of these young people wrote me, the idea that you're doing something for its own sake has really become discredited. The idea that you're just doing something because you love it, you enjoy it, is not necessarily productive in the sense of what we think of as productive. It's just something that you enjoy and you feel fulfilled by. That's kind of denigrated.
But this whole dissatisfaction with our work lives, this is almost at every level. Right? I mean, there's some weird thing that's like the consistency of this is it's for the young people, it's for the older people, it's for the rich people, it's for the poorer people, and it's for everyone in between. It's the hollowed out middle class, and maybe they're not even middle anymore, maybe they're low, but it seems consistent.
It is. There's a myth that, for example, this I didn't know this before I began this project, that factory workers are miserable. And in fact, when you really look at it, people working in factories were not miserable. And why? It seems to some of us, I think, it would seem like very tedious work. Well, again, they don't go to work for novelty. They don't go to work, to be challenged every day. They go to work for things like kinship. they want to show up at the factory and see their friend Frank and their friend Susan and have lunch and talk about the grandkids and kind of be there. They want a place to go and be. They also feel like they're doing something that's constructive. So if you work in a factory, you can actually see, hey, this product actually came out. So in fact, in the 1950s and 60s, when people were working in factories, job satisfaction was actually higher than it is today. People are not saying they're dissatisfied with their jobs. Now they're saying they're not satisfied with their jobs.
Right.
Okay. They're not. It's not making them happy.
Right.
It's not that they're miserable. I know this sounds funny, but they're just not. It's not making them happy. Whereas in the 50s and 60s and 70s, when people were working in factories, a lot of people actually found real contentment in their job situation.
And of course, they had wages that supported them where they could have a middle class life. Maybe they were making, in today's dollars, 25 or 30 bucks an hour.
Yes.
And they had lives and they had rich lives and families and they had unions protecting them. But all these different fraying of the labor market has left people exposed and kind of on their own. Okay, we will return to our interview with Ellen Ruppel-Shell in just a minute. Hey, have you checked out our new podcast? It's not really new. It's just renamed. It's called Jill on Money. That's a little different than the radio show. You can get the podcast on Apple, Stitcher, Radio.com, Google Play, anywhere else you subscribe to your favorite podcasts. Okay, we'll be right back.
Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, she's all over the place. Go to JillOnMoney.com to find it all. Now back to the show with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, we'd love to hear from you. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. Today we are talking about the job market and really the state of jobs generally in America. We've got a fantastic guest. Her name is Ellen Ruppel-Shell, and the book that she has written is called The Job, Work and Its Future in a Time of Radical Change. And boy, there is a lot of change. For a while, we thought that, at least in the recovery period, a lot of the jobs that people were gaining ground with, they were the high-end jobs, right? You need a technical career, a technical credential. Now we are seeing a lot of job growth at the lower end. So here's more of our interview with Ellen Ruppel-Shell. The digital age capitalism threatens digital age democracy by polarizing employment opportunities, adding a few more jobs at the top and many more jobs at the bottom. I think people would be very shocked to read some of the statistics in this book, specifically that all this growth in and expansion in the job market has actually been, or not all of it, but most of it at the low end.
Absolutely. In fact, until about 2000, jobs were requiring more and more skills. Since 2000, it's been almost 20 years now. People don't realize this. I didn't anyway. Jobs are becoming more and more de-skilled. So we actually have a small growth in jobs at the very top, jobs that require multiple degrees, very sophisticated, education and background. But the largest growth in jobs are the lowest skilled jobs, what we now call the lowest skilled jobs. In fact, the fastest growing job category in America right now, in terms of sheer numbers, is home health care aide. Okay, so one of the things I think about, though, as someone with elderly parents, is, gee, wouldn't I love it if home health care aides were highly skilled and well compensated? And since that is such a huge and growing job category in the United States, maybe we ought to rethink that. We all want excellent care for our loved ones. Okay, there's no question. And for ourselves. I mean, we all want that. This should be a very, very high priority. But the people who do this work also can and often do love this work. We get in the way of their loving their work. This is something that they find very meaningful, that they really enjoy. They feel like healers. They want to be doing this work, and yet their jobs are very precarious, uncertain. Many of them are contract workers. They're exploited. We could change that. We could change that by offering certificates. And some of the studies I've read on this If you offer certificates and training to home health care workers, healthcare costs go down because a very well-trained home health care worker can see problems coming down the road and prevent them or alert medical authorities that these things are happening. So actually, this is a money-saving proposition if we work it into things like Medicare and healthcare costs. Some people I've talked to said, well, look, someone's got to be at the bottom of the, pecking order in medical. And I'm saying, well, can't we at least elevate it to a good job? They can do an amazing amount of good. A lot of people move on from healthcare aid as soon as they can, as soon as they've gotten all that experience, not because they don't love the job, but because it doesn't pay enough and it's not stable enough. Okay, they've accumulated, say, 10 years of experience. They're now expert home healthcare aid people. Can't we incentivize them to stay in the field? It's good for all of us. It's a money-saving, long-term perspective. And again, this whole notion of status around work and what constitutes status. I mean, we really need to think about that. Here will, some app designer who's designing some app that none of us need, or even,
Well, you're married. I mean, look, everyone needs a dating app, but I mean, so no, I'm just kidding. I feel the same way.
But there are good dating apps, right?
Yeah,
Do we need more of them?
No.
I mean, that's
totally
the question.
Agree. I totally agree.
So they're competing with each other for things that already exist rather than creating something new. People want to innovate something new, fantastic. But when people are at each other's throats to try and make an incremental improvement, or oftentimes just make it seem like there's a slightly improved product, we value that so much over the things that we really need. There is tons of work to be done in America, okay? Tons of work, and important work, and we just have to make sure it gets done and incentivize people to do it who want to do it.
So this is not a prescriptive book, but there are some things that you go into, and I'd love to talk to you a little bit about education, because you are representing all of collegiate education right now in this moment.
Oh, great.
And my
colleagues are so happy about this.
I know, especially when we find out that since 2000, the wage gap between workers with at least a college degree and those with only a high school degree has slowed to a halt.
Yes.
So is college worth it?
Oh, good question. I think college is worth it for a certain kind of person. Okay. Mm-hmm. Look, if you're a person who loves ideas and wants to pursue them and just loves the life of the mind, and you can get a good scholarship, fantastic. And go for it. Enjoy it. If you're a person who is looking for the kind of career like a dentist that requires, the credential of an undergraduate degree and then graduate work, of course. I think that people have to be very careful when they think about college for their children, and that the young person themselves has to think very carefully about, what do I want to get out of college? I see a lot of college students, and I teach a lot of students who they're coming in, and I'm not sure why they're there. They're not necessarily interested in the life of the mind. They're really not interested in ideas. They think they're going to get credentialed by going to college.
Right, because I have to do this to get a job.
Even going into the next 25 years, only 25% of jobs will require a college degree. Okay? That's really true. That's a fact. Mm-hmm. Even among those jobs, a lot of them, again, this is a matter of credentialing. You're not actually using your college education in that job. So I'm a huge fan of education. I mean, huge. Obviously, I work in the industry. I encourage everyone who can afford it and wants to pursue it or can get help to do it. I think we as a nation need to help everyone who can't afford it to do it. But it is not for everyone. Advanced education is not for everyone. They don't enjoy it. They don't benefit by it. It's incredibly costly. So people need other alternatives, and they need to be encouraged. So one of the things that I'm thinking about is offering people opportunities on the basis of their skills rather than the credentials. If you have a BA from some university, you majored in, something that is totally unrelated to the job at hand, why should that advantage you over someone who, say, has an excellent high school record and has actually worked summers? Okay? It's really unclear that should really be an advantage. Some people say, well, look, you've had 4 more years, you're 4 years older, you've gone through the school, you've had all these experiences. Yeah, but it doesn't really necessarily relate to the job.
Well, thanks so much to Ellen Ripple-Shell. If you've got a question about your job or your career and anything else in between that's financial, let us know. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, she's all over the place. Go to JillOnMoney.com to find it all. Now back to the show with Jill Schlesinger.
Where's that guy live who does our voice? Oh, he's a Chicago dude? I got to go meet him. I got to get to Chicago. Now's the time of year. I've got this very narrow window of opportunity. You know? Because it's too cold. I love Chicago. I do love that city. But I am too wimpy for that. No, thank you. You're listening to Jill on Money with your wimp host, Jill Schlesinger, certified financial planner, CBS News business analyst, and your pal, your friend who will help you figure out the mysteries of your financial life. If you have a question, I'd love to hear from you. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Okay, now let's get to some questions here. This is from Martin, who is saying the following. My wife and I are 82 and 87, respectively. Our home is worth $2 million, mortgage-free. Like that. We have an annual income of $50,000. It's comprised of Social Security, interest, and a small annuity. We have $100,000 in liquid assets, half in equities and mutual funds, the balance in a money market. Finally, we have a bit more than $300,000 in 3-year CDs, paying 3%. We can withdraw partially or fully anytime without penalty, receiving all the accumulated interest. We have a $445,000 life insurance policy payable to our 2 sons upon the last of us to die. That would be called a second-to-die policy. Our entire estate will be left to our family, including 10% for each of our 2 granddaughters. My ultra-conservative stance is due to our advanced ages and apprehension about what lies ahead, given like what's going on in the world. Your thoughts, comments, advice, if any, would be greatly appreciated. Well, I mean, first of all, it seems like just a fine plan. You are obviously house rich. So relative to the value of your overall estate, you don't have a ton of liquidity. And in cases like that, so when I talk about that, gang, here's what I'm talking about. So you think $2 million, I got a house. But what's actually available to this couple is much less than the, $2 million. So there's 100, 300. Okay, so there's $400,000 liquid in a $2.5 million estate, basically. And I wish it were flipped the other way, right? I wish it was $400,000 in a house and $2 million in money saved, but it's not. So, relatively speaking, it's not the worst case scenario because you seem to be living on your annual income. Now, here's something to consider, that if you needed to dip into this money in a more significant way, what would happen? In other words, if one of you were to get sick, what would you do? And in that case, I think there's a couple of things that you might want to consider. The money in the insurance policy, there's probably a cash value in there. I presume you could probably borrow against that if you had to. You even could probably get a reverse mortgage if you had to. But I wouldn't necessarily do anything like this unless you had the guidance of a fee-only fiduciary financial advisor. Meaning I wouldn't have any broker, salesperson, or anyone touch this. I would only have somebody who would look at your overall situation and determine, again, this is only if something bad were to happen. And maybe you want to do it now, just in case. You want to know, like, what's the break the glass scenario, what you would do. And in this case, this is when you would seek somebody who is from a NAPFA member, essentially. Somebody who is putting your best interest first, no matter what. This would be incredibly important to me. So that's kind of how I would look at that. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, here's a fun thing. Parker's a longtime listener of the podcast, recently got engaged. and says, I've been looking for online resources regarding combining finances with a significant other, and I haven't been able to find much on the topic. Would you discuss this on your show? It's pertinent given wedding season and it's approaching. That is approaching. Okay. So you know what I'm going to do? I think I should probably write something about that. What do you think, Mark? Should we do a little wedding planning, financial planning, couples, and all that kind of stuff? Let's do that. I'm going to do that, Parker, and hopefully get my button gear and do it quickly because, you're right, summertime. I just got my save the date for my nephew's wedding, and we have a godson's wedding. So I'm going to get on that and make sure I get it out there, and we'll talk about it on the show. How's that? I like separate. You know me. I like separate, and then I like depends where you are in your life. But I like keeping separate accounts, especially if you're both working. And then I like having one joint account that pays the joint bills. But it's whatever you want, of course, right? That's the thing that I think is important, that you talk about it. And so part of a love and money kind of article and a marriage article is having these difficult conversations. And, it's something I talk about in the book. It's just like we're so weird. We don't talk about this stuff enough. Although I think that millennials are different. You see all those surveys that say like millennials say, I don't want to date anyone who has any debt or bad credit score. That's pretty tough. That's some tough love there. All right, you're listening to Jill on Money. Before we finish out the show, we're going to do a couple more emails, so stay tuned. During the break, head on over to JillOnMoney.com. There, you can sign up for our free weekly newsletter, so go check it out. JillOnMoney.com. We'll be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money. And before we finish off the program, just a friendly reminder that we've got a sister show. It's a podcast. Same name, Jill on Money. And you can get it on Apple, Stitcher, radio.com, Google Play, anywhere else you find your favorite podcast. So check it out. Jill on Money, the podcast. Dan writes that his godfather lives down in Fort Lauderdale, and he recently attended a series of conferences. And there he was introduced to life insurance retirement planning, LIRP, L-I-R-P, and the book, The Power of Zero by David McKnight. My godfather was talking to me about how the presenters at the conference were quite smart and mentioned the future where there will likely be higher tax brackets. And this was similar to what Ed Slott said on your tax season tips episode. Their recommendation, meaning the people who at this conference down in Fort Lauderdale, was to take some of my godfather's stocks, which had grown quite large over time, and invest them into a universal life insurance product in order to avoid taxes when passing these on to his nephews. The whole concept didn't pass the smell test to me, but I don't know what where you come from on this. Do you have any idea about these people down in Fort Lauderdale? Okay. So, I had David McKnight on the show, who wrote that book, The Power of Zero. And I agree with him and Ed Slott that it is likely that tax rates will rise. However, I'm not entirely sure that I would be interested in putting all of this money of accumulated gains into an insurance product. So this is where I will diverge from this advice. So let's say you believe that tax brackets are rising. Sure, go ahead and pay the tax that's due today, but why would I then put it into an insurance product and lose my liquidity? I don't know if I would do that. Anyway, I'm happy to talk to you more. I would tell your godfather to avoid this. You have been listening to Jill on Money, and we have been broadcasting live from the Policy Genius studios in New York. Policy Genius is the easy way to compare and buy insurance. Go check out policygenius.com. I am Jill Schlesinger. He is Mark Talercio, and we will see you next week. Thanks for listening.